So us Brits have had absolutely bugger all love from Oppo when it comes to its flagship phones in recent times. All we've received is a cold shoulder, stiff middle finger treatment. But times, thankfully, they are a-changing, and the fresh new Find X8 and Find X8 Pro are indeed landing here in Byyyeeeee, hip hip huzzah. The X8 and the X8 Pro share a lot of DNA. They're both powered by the same supremely powerful Mediatek Dimensity 9400 chipset, and they both run that gorgeous, super sleek ColorOS 15. But they do differ in many ways as well, including the design, the battery tech, and the camera setup. Not to mention, of course, the price of the bloody things. So which Oppo Find X8 flagship phone is going to be best for you? Well, let's do a quick side-by-side so you can see how they stack up. And for more of the latest and greatest tech, please do poke subscribe and ding that notifications bell. Cheers! Now, as you can see there, stick them side by side, and the first big difference between this pair is the size of the buggers. The Find X8 Pro is your typical ruddy massive 6.8 incher, whereas the regular Oppo Find X8 is actually relatively hand-friendly at just 6.6 inches, which almost counts as a compact phone in 2024. The Find X8 certainly gives off iPhone-esque vibes, looks and feels similar with those completely flat edges, and also the 100% flat display. Whereas the Find X8 Pro isn't just bigger, you've also got ever so slightly rounded edges, and that screen does actually curve slightly on all four sides, so it feels like it's hovering slightly above the frame. And certainly the curviness of the Pro helps to give it some pretty good hand feel, but one-handed use obviously much more comfortable here on the regular Find X8. Now flip the Find X8 phones around to the arse end and your eye will probably be immediately caught by the absolutely bloody enormous Cosmos Ring cameras. Whoppers they most certainly are, although thankfully they don't actually stick that far out of the back end, which is always appreciated. They stick out just about enough for a bit of finger shelf action, that's about it. And this right here is the star grey model of the Oppo Find X8 with your simple, straightforward matte finish. Which is thankfully pretty smudge resistant, just needs the occasional bit of buffing up whenever it gets some muck on it. You can also grab it in space black or shell pink. Whereas there's no pinky option for the Find X8 Pro, sadly it's only available in white or black. Although you do get this lovely pearlesque finish for the white model with this multi-layered design, so every Find X8 Pro actually has a unique bit of striation action, so they are all distinctive. And it's great to see that Oppo has slapped on the ever-popular alert slider, just like the OnePlus phones, so you can quickly silence these buggers if you're about to jump into a meeting or you just fancy some peace, you want everyone to leave you the ruddy heck alone. And these phones are rated IP69 water and dust resistant, so not only can they handle being submerged in water, but they can also withstand a powerful hot jet right to the face. Now the software situation is of course the same on both these Find X8 smartphones. They're both running the latest, freshest ColorOS 15, which of course is incredibly similar to OxygenOS 15, which I only just did a full dedicated video about, so definitely go check that out for all you need to know about all the fresh new bits in there. But the long and short of it is ColorOS 15 is fantastic. It feels silky smooth. You got shed loads of AI shenanigans as you'd expect, including a good bit of circle to search, some website AI summary tools, plenty of photo editing shenanigans, naturally. And no matter your choice of Find X8 smartphone, you've got 5 guaranteed Android OS updates and 6 years of security patching to look forward to. As for the displays, well, it's a 6.59 inch screen on the Find X8 versus a larger 6.78 incher on the Find X8 Pro. Got similar resolution on both though, so the visuals are actually sharper on the smaller Find X8. They both certainly seem bright enough to cut through any irritating glare, hitting 1600 nits in the high brightness mode. And you've also got a good bit of PWM dimming, 3840Hz on the regular Find X8 versus 2160Hz on the Pro model. And no matter your choice, you can expect ticklingly vibrant visuals, nice and crisp, just gorgeous eye-pleasing stuff. And both Find X8 phones also sport a stereo speaker setup. Let's compare them side by side, starting with the regular Find X8. And so far this year, we've had some pretty spaff-worthy smartphones pumped out. But one of the absolute bangiest of these bangers actually emerged right at the beginning of the year. I'm of course talking about the marvellous OnePlus 12. And now the Find X8 Pro. 12. And in the past 11 months or so, it's only gotten better.
With Android 15 and the latest Oxygen OS on board, the OnePlus 12 is even cleverer. It's even smarter than before.
So certainly a respectable effort from the regular Oppo Find X8. Reasonably loud when you max it out, and the clarity stays pretty stable. But the Find X8 Pro certainly even beefier, even louder, even more powerful, a bit more bassy as well. And these Find X8 phones are among the very first blowers to be powered by Mediatek's Byyyeeeee Dimensity 9400 chipset, which was only just recently launched. Now, the everyday run-in on both of these phones, absolutely perfect. But what about the gaming experience? Well, I tested out a good bit of Wuthering Waves, quite an intensive, demanding title on both these handsets. And no fannying about either. I maxed out the graphics settings on both these phones, set them to 60 frames per second, turned on all of the visual effects. And even after well over an hour of continuous gaming on the Oppo Find X8 Pro, I still hadn't noticed a single dip in that frame rate. Perfectly stable, perfectly fluid, an excellent gaming experience. Over a similar full-on intense duration of gaming here on the Find X8, I did notice a couple of quite notable dips in that performance, but again, it was pretty rare, about 3 or 4 judders in well over an hour of action. So a thoroughly enjoyable experience still, and Oppo has slapped a dedicated cooling system in both the Find X8 phones. You've got a full-on vapor chamber, some graphene sheeting, bit of thermal gel action, all combining to help shift that heat to where it needs to go. And this certainly does the job on the Find X8 and the Find X8 Pro. That Dimensity 9400 didn't seem to heat up at all. The phones never got more than slightly warm. I'd say the Pro stayed a little bit cooler than the regular model, but there's not much in it. And impressively, Oppo has managed to stuff a 5630 mAh capacity battery in the Find X8, and that's upgraded on the Pro to a 5910 mAh battery. So as long as that Dimensity chipset isn't an absolute energy guzzler, you should comfortably get all-day play from a single charge, possibly even stretch into a full weekend. I did do a bit of battery drain test action because I know some people are very keen on all of that, and both the Find X8 and the Find X8 Pro dipped at approximately 5% per hour when streaming video on the likes of Netflix and Disney+. So you can expect almost 20 full hours of telly action on a full charge, no matter your choice. And definitely stay tuned for my in-depth review of the Oppo Find X8 Pro to find out how the battery holds up to everyday real-world action. Now, if you do need to recharge at a jiffy, well, no worries whatsoever, because both the Find X8 and the Find X8 Pro support a bit of 80-watt SuperVOOC wired charging. Do actually get that adapter bundled in the box here in the UK. And if you don't really like all that cabley nonsense, well, no worries. You've got 50-watt AirVOOC wireless charging support with both these blowers. And Oppo is also offering up a magnetic charger for these bad boys, but you will need to slap on a magnetic charging case as well because the phones themselves aren't magnetic. Now, you've also got very different camera tech on these two handsets. Got a triple 50 meg setup on the Find X8 with a wide, ultra-wide and periscope lens. And that's upgraded on the Find X8 Pro to a quad 50 meg setup with an additional periscope lens and also slightly different sensor tech. The general camera experience is very similar on both. Got basically the same app, the same features, the likes of the Hasselblad portrait mode, because of course you've got that Hasselblad fine-tuning once again, and the same hypertone image engine for processing your photo once you've taken it, and this seems to veer towards more natural, realistic looking images rather than artificially boosting those tones and possibly oversaturating some elements. Now, in my short amount of testing time so far, there doesn't appear to be much between these phones when it comes to everyday pics. Tones and textures look very similar in most circumstances, occasionally slightly brighter on one or the other, while both seem to cope quite well with strong contrast and also dim lighting. Both can capture banging portrait snaps, and likewise that fast shutter action means more kinetic subjects are often snapped cleanly, with blur only really an issue in more ambient settings. When it comes to telephoto shots, the results are of course pretty much identical, with the 73mm IMX882 sensor taken over at 3x zoom level. At 6x zoom, when the 135mm IMX858 sensor takes over on the Pro, I still struggled to tell which photo was shot on which phone. Tones are usually more accurate on the Pro at higher zoom levels, but the regular Find X8 does remarkably well to keep up for detail capture. In fact, while the Find X8 Pro occasionally blurred my extreme zoom shots, the regular Find X8 usually keeps things surprisingly crisp. But of course I will be properly testing the Find X8 Pro's camera tech for my full review. But one of the big differences is the Pro model has a quick button slapped on the edge which can be double tapped to launch that camera, and then you can swipe the surface to zoom in and out, and it's a bit more sensitive than Apple's attempt, so that zoom in does feel smoother. Although, like the iPhone's camera button, it feels a little bit skittish at times. If you press in the button, you'll take a shot, and hey, with Oppo's phones, you can actually hold down the button to burst shoot. A feature that bewilderingly Apple didn't implement on its iPhone. Unfortunately, like the iPhone's camera button, the positioning just feels slightly off on the Find X8 Pro. I'd have preferred it a bit closer to that bottom edge rather than pushed in towards the center, which just makes it a little bit more awkward to find and to use. But that burst shot mode should prove quite useful when shooting more kinetic subjects like kids and any furry wee buggers. You can capture up to 7 photos a second holding it down. And oh yes, photo editing, of course you'll get a whole suite of AI tools to spruce up your pics, including the usual sharpening tools, de-blurring, a bit of reflection removal, all that good stuff. And on the video side, you can record up to 4K resolution Dolby Vision video at 60 frames per second on all of the lenses here, even the selfie cam. And then both the Oppo Find X8 and the Oppo Find X8 Pro allow you to shoot, again, 4K resolution footage at 60 frames per second with Dolby Vision HDR Smart. And the audio pickup seems absolutely fine on both, so no worries there if you want to do a bit of vlogging, Skyping, Teams style shenanigans. Anyway, that, my lovelies, in a tasty wee nutshell, is how Oppo's Find X8 and Find X8 Pro stack up. Now, I've got my Sims slapped inside of the Find X8 Pro, so my full review of that bad boy should be going live imminently, so you can see what I reckon of the camera tech, the battery life, all that good stuff. But in the meantime, it'd be great to hear your thoughts on the Find X8 and the Find X8 Pro down in the comments below. Please do poke subscribe, ding that notifications bell for more on the latest and greatest tech, and have yourselves a ruddy, wonderful rest of the week. Cheers everyone, love you!